You are listening to Medicine and the Machine with Medscape Editor-in-Chief Eric Topol and Master Storyteller and Clinician Abraham Verghese as they talk with experts around the globe about the hottest topics in healthcare. This podcast is intended for U.S. healthcare professionals only.
Hello, this is Eric Topol with my co-host Abraham Verghese, and we've got a real delight today. We're going to be having a conversation with Dr. Will Flanary, an ophthalmologist, a comedian, also known in the medical community and beyond now as Dr. Glaucomflecken. Glaucomflecken, I can't say it. Anyway, he's going to tell us all about it. He's been lighting it up out there, and I thought maybe we could start. Will, you're really big on TikTok and YouTube and Twitter, all the social media. And just last week when the CDC came out with their 5-day guidance, you had one of the most extraordinary videos there. Can you tell us about that as we get started?
Yeah, I think those CDC guidelines really came as a shock to a lot of people. Just this cognitive dissonance type thing where what you're seeing in the hospitals, what maybe other people are seeing. I don't as an ophthalmologist get into the hospital very often, as you can imagine, but seeing what my colleagues in medicine were talking about and experiencing with this new wave of the pandemic just didn't make sense with all of a sudden what the CDC was putting out there for their guidelines. And it's just that's a perfect setup for comedy. It really is. When it's just you have this thing that just doesn't make sense. There's so many things in medicine like that you can use to kind of find a comedic angle. And so I just went with it. And one thing I do with my comedy is I think I'm pretty good at dialogue and putting creating a scene, and so I just took a look at the CDC and made the video, and people really liked it.
Well, to me, you remind me of Sarah Cooper and Trump. How she would mouth the words and have split screens with two different. How do you do that, by the way? How do you have two or even three of you, and do you have to script it all out ahead of time?
I don't write anything down for the most part. A lot of the videos I put together I kind of have a process over a few days of just kind of thinking through what I want the jokes to be, what I want the lesson or the subject of the humor, where I'm directing my ridicule. So I'm kind of thinking through this, and I do put a lot of thought into it. I'm not the most organized person though, and so I really should write this down. It would probably make the recording process a little bit smoother. I'd probably be a little bit more efficient if I actually wrote it out, but it's all kind of in my head. And
I don't know. I don't think it could be any better, Will. I don't know.
It's a very low-tech operation. I just have my iPhone, and I have a window that has good light, and occasionally I use a tripod, and I just go.
Wow.
Well, it's a great pleasure to meet you. And when we were planning this show, I didn't quite make the connection between these videos I so admired and the name Will Flanary. So it's really a delight. And then come to find out that we've crossed geography before, in the sense that I was at Texas Tech, but in El Paso. And then I was at Iowa, again, probably not the same time you were. And then you just made me sound ancient a little while ago by telling me that I spoke at your Dartmouth graduation. So
that's right. Yeah. So that's why I'm so excited to do this, because it's I still remember you giving that wonderful commencement address. So it's great to have so much overlap with you.
I don't even remember what I said, so that's great that you remember, because I don't. But I thought I'd begin by asking you about Glaucomflecken, because I actually looked it up, and I had to look it up. It's a valid ophthalmological term. Does it mean something else besides?
No, not at all. It is really just see, the thing is, people think my name is actually Dr. Glaucomflecken. I've had patients actually call the office and ask for an appointment with Dr. Glaucomflecken, which ends up being this whole thing. And so unfortunately, I feel like I may have made Glaucomflecken more famous as a social media personality than an actual medical term. So sorry to Dr. Glaucomflecken out there who probably came up with that term, but it's an actual ophthalmology term.
Yeah, but I thought,
Yeah.
Will, you picked it very purposely because it was after open angle glaucoma, a new lens, kind of a new lens to life. Was that your
Well, no,
thinking?
no. So I chose Glaucomflecken. Really, the only reason is because it's the most ridiculous word I could think of in ophthalmology. So I was at a research conference, and I'm in private practice now. Research is not my thing. I'm not, it's just very, I just thinking about Excel spreadsheets makes me want to throw up a little bit. And so I was very not in the research world, but I was at this conference, bored to tears. And I was like, okay, let me check out Twitter. I hear a lot about it. And I had a background in stand-up comedy. So I was like, this seems perfect. I could go tell jokes and to an audience of like 5 ophthalmologists who were also on Twitter during this conference. And I was like, well, this is going to be a comedy account. So what should I call myself? And I was like, well, ophthalmology is a field full of ridiculous words. And I was like, well, let's go with Dr. Glaucomflecken. That's kind of silly. It was either that or Dr. Pseudophacodonesis. That was a little much. So honestly, if I had known it would turn into this, I probably would have chosen an easier name to say. So
I like it. It has a good ring to it. There's something about it that makes you smile the moment you say it. So I like the term.
well, thank you.
I have to ask, and I think our readers may not all be aware of this, but I mean, your humor comes on a backdrop of having gone through some really serious medical crises. I don't know if you care to talk about that and what relationship that has to the comedy.
Yeah, it's really been a driving force for a lot of what I've done in comedy and stand-up comedy, but also on social media. So in my 3rd year of med school, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. At that point, I had started doing stand-up in high school, and so I would continue that into college and into med school. But I had gone away from comedy because life just got busy. I always thought that I would go to med school, that I wanted to be a doctor. It was. I realized very early on that a career in stand-up comedy is very difficult. So I went the much easier route of becoming a doctor. But I'd gotten away from comedy, which is something I grew up with. I loved doing comedy. But after I was diagnosed with cancer, I just felt that urge, that need to exercise those muscles again, to get back out there and tell jokes and really process what I was going through in this very difficult time in my life. And so comedy in that way just really helped me to kind of overcome, this difficult situation I was in. That really kickstarted my medical comedy career. So I started doing more jokes, more humor related to what I was going through in med school, what I was going through with cancer treatment. And I continued that for a while. Then once residency started, I kind of got away from comedy again. And then I was diagnosed again with testicular cancer in the other testicle. I was very lucky, part of the 1% to 2% of people with testicular cancer who get it in the other testicle. And kind of the same thing happened. I found my comedy again. And that was when I actually joined Twitter and got on social media, was around that time as well. And it just snowballed from there. I just kept going, eventually creating this social media presence and these videos, all these characters, and a wonderful support network.
There was another chapter about the tragedy that you may want.
Oh yeah, the cardiac arrest, that little thing.
Yeah, the cardiac arrest. Yeah, what was that?
Yeah, that was in May of 2020, and so I've talked about this a lot, just for a lot of different reasons, but I've been very open about it on social media. My wife saved me. I had a cardiac arrest in my sleep, and my wife did 10 minutes of chest compressions and saved my life. It was by that point I had already had this Dr. Glaucomflecken thing going for several years, and I had just gotten into doing more videos, like literally like about a month before that happened. And then once I had the cardiac arrest, I processed that. I've made a full recovery, by the way, which is just amazing considering the statistics for recovering from an out of hospital cardiac arrest are pretty dismal. But I recovered okay, and I pretty much documented my recovery through making funny TikToks and telling jokes on Twitter, and it helped me process what I was going through, which was by far the most difficult thing that I've been through in my life. Not really physically, I was okay. Recovery was pretty straightforward. I was back to work a month later, but the kind of more emotional,
Yeah.
mental recovery with both myself and my family was a big
Right.
part of that.
It's remarkable what you've been through, and yet maybe one of the funniest comics in all of medicine for sure. I guess when I thought about it, Stephen Colbert, I mean, you're kind of like that level of talent in the medical community. He also went through tragedy. He lost his father and brother in an airplane crash. And it seems like that's a common thing in great comedians. Have you noticed that trend?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's extremely high praise. And so I appreciate that. But yeah, it's there's a reason that humor is a defense mechanism. And in particular with comedians, when life presents these hurdles, these obstacles that you have no control over, that come out of the blue, completely unexpected, you feel like you have no control over your own life. And I see comedy, telling jokes, using humor as a way to gain some semblance of control over this situation in which you don't have any control. It's your way of reasserting your power and regaining some of that autonomy that was taken from you. And comedy is such a powerful way to do that, because you're able to do it on your terms. You're able to set the stage. You're able to not only laugh, but have people share a laugh with you. And it's just a very powerful coping mechanism in that way.
I wonder if you know anything about sort of the tradition of humor in medicine, in the sense that I don't know anything about it, but I remember a landmark book that Eric would remember by Norman Cousins, I think, who, to handle his illness, he actually decided to go to a hotel room and watch funny movies and, just ignore traditional medical advice. And it seemed to work for him. And you're part of a more recent tradition I'm thinking of Z-Dog and a few others out there who are really doing what you do. And what do you know about the tradition of humor in medicine?
It's always been around, going back to Sam Shem, and the House of God. Anytime you have something as serious and as with the amount of gravity as being a physician and the kinds of things that physicians see and deal with and in their day-to-day lives, you're going to have people coping through humor. It's just now with social media, it's just easier to see it. Before, we've all been doing this. We've all been cracking jokes. It's been in our physician lounges. It's been on call with other doctors in a hallway in the hospital. It's at home with our families. But now that we have these platforms that we can use that to reach so many people, it's just more out in the open, which I think is a wonderful thing, because I think it's starting to break down some of the long-held walls that have been placed between physicians and the public.
I certainly agree with that. And the point of your rise in this effort it couldn't come at a better time with the mental health of the medical community, and how humor and laughter and that medicine it provides is so important. And this podcast is known as Medicine and the Machine, and what's different about humor is there's no machine here. This is as human as you can get, and that's what's so special about your talent. I mean, it's a real talent and something that you don't see very often. Abraham mentioned Z-Dog, who we've interviewed in the past, and Z-Dog's very different. He likes to do music videos. Yours is a different genre. He's very dramatic. Now, I want to get into this thing about you've taken on almost every specialty of medicine, from family practice to anesthesiologist to, you name it. You got to just go back and look at these. I want to encourage every listener who hasn't looked at your videos just to take the time, because they're just incredible. But have you gotten pushback from these specialties when you go after them with comedy?
Yeah, it's there's always people that don't really appreciate some of the things that I make fun of. I think in my defense, I'm an equal opportunity comedian. Like I really go after every specialty I possibly can, including my own. It's so important not to take ourselves too seriously. Like we have an incredibly serious job that we do, but be able to laugh at yourself is really important. But I think there are certain things that I've done to try to keep myself from getting into too much trouble. Like I'm very careful about medical hierarchies, and there are a lot of power dynamics in play in medicine. When I'm making fun of a specialty, I always come at it without the example I give. I'll say this is whenever med students put on skits, they're like lambasting their attendings, and it's always great. Like second year med students, they're making fun of their attendings, and everyone laughs. It's great, and it works really well because the med student, they're punching up, right? They're punching up at their attendings who are perceived as having more power than them, and they do. It would be horrifying if it was the other way around, right? If it was attendings making fun of med students, like that would not go over well at all. And so what I'm very careful about doing is not upsetting those power dynamics too much. And so whenever I'm making fun of a specialty, it's always like another specialty making fun of that specialty. This is like cardiology versus nephrology fighting with each other over fluid status. And I do the best I can as an ophthalmologist, by the way. I actually have to research some of these things because it's been so long since I've done any kind of body medicine. And so, I do make a handful of people a little bit upset, but on the whole, I get really positive feedback, even from people within that specialty. But, whenever you gain a platform doing comedy, you're always going to upset somebody. And you're not, and that's one thing I've had to learn. You can't please everyone. But as long as you're obeying certain rules within comedy, you'll be okay.
I found myself, as I was watching your videos again this one morning on TikTok, reflecting on the fact that we have this need not just to laugh, but to vicariously poke fun at other people.
Yeah.
It's almost like the pandemic has brought out our need for humor, but also our need for a sort of harmless kind of justice. If you've been the butt of jokes in your specialty, then it's a nice opportunity to turn it around, and you allow us to do that vicariously. My question is, where do you think you're going to go with this? It seems like you have a limitless supply of topics, but have you been thinking about, where you'll be a few years from now with this art? It's an art form.
Yeah. I don't know. I've really just I haven't really approached this with any particular goal in mind. At first, telling jokes on Twitter, I eventually kind of got bored of that because, I feel like I had accomplished, what I feel like there was to accomplish on Twitter. And then I moved to videos. I moved to making TikToks, and that kind of opened up a whole new world creatively, because I could put together these scenes and these skits. And at this point, I'm still trying to push myself creatively. And so in terms of a goal, I want to continue to get better at it, not only at the comedy, which I feel like I have improved with dialogue and building in jokes and surprising audiences with different things and using kind of physical gags as well, and just expanding my comedic repertoire, and also just like the production. Trying to start using more like effects and just getting better at the whole process has been really fun for me, and I continue to get better. And so that's one goal I have, is to start making a little bit longer videos that can still hold people's attention, because in general attention span is waning pretty much across the board. But in terms of where to take it next, I don't know. You guys have any connections in the TV world? You want to make a TV show?
I want you to do a Netflix special.
You want
hour long Netflix. Are you still doing stand-up now, Will?
I do it in the context of certain events in medicine. So I don't go, I have such a kind of a niche that most of the performing I do is for medical audiences. So I have an email address that I give out. And so I get asked to do all kinds of different events. And so I will do some comedy. It's been a learning process, especially with the pandemic. I haven't been able to do much in person. Obviously, that's now starting to come up. So I have some in-person events planned. I tell you, telling jokes virtually is not that fun. Like for 2 years, I've been telling jokes in an empty room by myself in complete silence with no feedback whatsoever, just looking into a camera. That's a little challenging as a comedian. So it's going to be really nice to finally get back out in front of an actual audience, and like, I'll just be able to find out if the jokes I've been telling for 2 years are actually funny. I get to hear people laugh or boo or whatever they want to do it. It's going to be great.
Well, yeah, just again, back to that parallel with some of the well-known comedians, Colbert recently said he'll never go back to that. Trevor Noah, all of them, they just, like you said, they just have to have the audience to have the vibe and to be able to truly relate. So, it seems to me though, that with your following, which now has to include a lot of non-medical people. I mean, you got, millions of people out there. You're ready to branch out on the medical community. I mean, everybody appreciates humor in medicine. So yeah, I'm looking for your Netflix special.
I think that's been one thing that's surprised me in the past few months is how many people outside of medicine have reached out to me to say, I don't get any of this, but it's still funny. I still laugh at it. And I take that as a compliment to my acting skills. Even if you don't really understand what's going on, if if the person is has a funny facial expression, or if you can make someone laugh just by kind of the way you're acting, that's a real plus, I think, for me, because I never thought of myself as an actor. And so that's great. If people think I'm a good actor, I love it.
You are an actor. There's no question. Just your pauses during the videos, no less your expressions, are just unbelievable. Now, I wanted to ask you specifically about the one that you did the video with Vivek Murthy. Mm-hmm. Was there two sides to that? Because I mean,
that was kind of a surprise to me. They reached out to his office reached out to me. I thought it was a joke. Like, I thought it was a fake email or some kind of spam at first, but then I was like, hhs.gov address. I was like, oh, this is real. And so his office reached out and said, we're aware of the videos I've been doing. I had done a few things on burnout before, and they wanted to make a video with me addressing burnout and other potential topics as well. So we had this back and forth for a while. Of course, I'm not going to turn it down. I mean, it's the Surgeon General's office, right?
Right.
And so I was just thrilled. I was so happy to be able to collaborate on something. And so I actually made up a script and sent it to them. What I thought was great. It was really funny. And they basically asked me to redo all of it. because I think I took too many shots at the wrong people. And the one thing I learned is that when you're dealing with an entity like the Surgeon General's office, there are different rules you have to play by, which I understand now, because it's it's just a whole different thing. And so we talked about it and kind of refined kind of where the humor was going to come from, and what the message was going to be, and it turned out great. I'm really happy with what we did. It was a learning experience.
I would have liked to have seen the uncut version that you sent to them. I have to say, Abraham and I interviewed Vivek for this podcast, and we know him, pretty well. And he came across, really dour and very, and it's just that's why I thought maybe there was another side to this thing. But hearing the background is really interesting.
Like, it was amazing just to get to meet him, and he's such a nice man, and just very thoughtful. He had actually, had read up about me and heard about my medical history and all that stuff. And so we talked about that, which I wasn't expecting. And I felt very fortunate to be able to work with him on that. And it was, maybe we'll get to do some more stuff. I don't know.
It was creative. I mean, it's a way to reach the medical community that you wouldn't think our government or our Surgeon General would be thinking about. So that's really good.
Yeah.
I was telling Will earlier, Eric, before you came on, that I met the Surgeon General at a very formal event, and he was in his full uniform. It was Vivek Murthy, and I, had the privilege of going to shake his hand. And he said, "Hey, Dr. Verghese, you spoke to us when I was a medical student." That made me feel ancient again. So
you've spoken at every single med school out there, Dr. Verghese.
But I wanted to say that I don't think your listeners might realize how much ophthalmology education you do, which I really appreciate, because I trained elsewhere, and so we were given like a 2-month ophthalmology rotation in a big eye care hospital, and so I felt like I got a good grounding as an internist, and I can tell iridocyclitis from conjunctivitis and just a few things like that. And your videos and some of your stuff on your website is extremely helpful. So talking about the future, I'd love to see you bring humor along with education to bring ophthalmology from being this black hole that, I don't know what that is, call the ophthalmologist, which, as you point out in your videos, is hard to get an ophthalmologist into the hospital.
Yeah, the education side of things is something that, the general ophthalmology knowledge is pretty lacking. Most people graduate med school, they really don't get any of it, and then certainly not beyond that. And so I've tried to, and I've done a lot more of that in my public speaking. And so, giving, grand rounds places, and what I've found is when I'm talking to or get invited to speak at a conference or something, they're expecting me to be funny, but medical audiences are very unique in that when you go to a medical event, a conference or something, people are expecting to learn, like they're there to learn. And what I learned early on was going and just telling jokes, it confuses people. They're like, what? Wait, what is going on right now? What is happening? Why is this random internet comedian ophthalmologist just telling jokes, trying to get me to laugh? I'm supposed to be learning. So what I figured out was really the way to reach an audience at a medical conference is you got to build in some kind of education along with the humor, and that's where you can really make an impact at a medical conference. And so I started doing that. I started talking about consulting ophthalmology and eye exams and eye drops and things like that, while also incorporating humor and trying to make it to where people just don't want to leave because it's an eye lecture. And so I think that's the key to getting people outside of ophthalmology interested in ophthalmology and learning about ophthalmology is infusing that humor into it. So certainly something I enjoy doing, and I get sidetracked by all the other stuff going on like the CDC, but I should get back and do a little bit more humor or education along with the comedy. Along with the humor. Yeah.
How do you balance things? So your practice in ophthalmology, your work in comedy, which obviously you could make that full time, either one of those, and your wonderful family with your kids and your wife who saved your life. How do you balance it all?
Yeah, first of all, I'm very fortunate that I am a private practice ophthalmologist. And so I work 4 days a week. So I have flexibility in my job. And honestly, I wouldn't be able to do it to the extent that I'm doing it if I wasn't in the job that I'm in. So I am very fortunate to have flexibility in my job. Basically, I find an hour, 2-hour blocks of time here and there, sometimes late at night, sometimes over lunch. And I was like, okay, I have an idea. I've been thinking about this idea for a few hours. Let me just knock this out. Let me just put on a costume. Or sometimes I bring costumes to the office, and occasionally my partners will walk in on me like wearing some kind of headgear. I don't, it's crazy. And so I just have to find periods of time that still allow me to do all the things that I need to do in life. It does get challenging, and I get tired. It's like even now today, like I haven't done a video in like 3 days just because I just haven't had the time. And it's hard to find it sometimes, but as long as it's still fun to do, I'm going to keep finding the time to do it.
Yeah, that's terrific. I'd love to come to a stand-up routine, or some club that you would.
Well, the thing is, like if I just went and did comedy, I've been doing like such a niche like medical comedy thing for so long that if I just went to comedy club, a random comedy club, and like did a 5-minute set with my like medical jokes, I probably wouldn't do very well. it's
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
it's just such a, I feel like it's such a niche thing, for the most part, but maybe I'm wrong.
My sense is, well, as you mentioned at the outset, you started long before going into medicine with your career in comedy, and you are an astute observer. So you pick up things. That's, it seems like the essence of comedy is that you pick up the things that just makes people laugh.
Yeah, well, maybe everybody can laugh at general surgeons. I feel like maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everybody can find that.
Anesthesiologists, that you got them really good. I mean, just but also the ability, like you could just pick up things from being a parent, being all the different things that you do in your daily life. I just think it's unlimited. It's so exciting to be watching your career going forward. It's just getting started in some respects of where it can go, and we're so thankful for you to kind of brighten up the medical world with your talent. And Abraham, anything else you want to impart before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to add what Eric said. I think that someone told me long ago that as long as you have a doctor and a dog in your novel, people are going to be endlessly fascinated. And if you think about it, look at all the procedural medical shows that people watch. So yeah, I agree with Eric. I think you're underestimating the general appeal of your kind of humor. People don't have to be in the profession to get it, but I just compliment you from the great service that you're doing to all of us, giving us some relief from what has been a very stressful time. And I look forward to more brilliant work on your part.
Thank you. That's really what kind of keeps me going the most in making this content is when I hear from people who are working in the ICUs and who tell me it was great to just have a laugh at the end of the day. Like I love hearing that. And so, and it just lets me know that these aren't, I mean, some of them are kind of just stupid skits, but it actually has a real effect. And it's really nice that I can help in some way.
Well, Dr. Glaucomflecken, you are a gem. We're so thankful for you taking the time to visit with us, and we'll follow you with keen interest, and we look forward to all the future videos. And you're going to make TikTok big in the medical community, which is by itself is a big achievement. So thanks so much.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.